A weathered parchment fragment, recovered from Cave 4 near Qumran and preserved only in pieces, still carries words that have unsettled readers for centuries. Among the surviving Aramaic fragments of First Enoch are passages describing journeys beyond the familiar world, where the movements of the heavens reveal an order unlike ordinary human experience. The text does not literally state that time ceases to exist in the modern scientific sense. Instead, it describes a realm associated with the eternal course of the heavenly lights, where divine order stands apart from the changing rhythm of mortal life. That distinction has inspired generations of interpretation, and it lies at the center of our investigation. The physical evidence is real. The ancient manuscript survives in fragments, yet the meaning of its vision remains contested. Does Enoch describe an actual location, a symbolic revelation, or a theological image of God's unchanging domain? The surviving text leaves room for careful debate. One detail immediately complicates the story. The beings who inhabit this extraordinary place are not introduced as ordinary humans. The text speaks of holy angels, heavenly watchers, and the presence of the Most High within a cosmic landscape governed by fixed laws rather than earthly seasons. Some scholars understand this as visionary language. Others see it as reflecting Second Temple Jewish ideas about the structure of creation. The evidence does not settle the question. What survives in fragile parchment may preserve one of antiquity's most remarkable descriptions of eternity, but understanding where Enoch believed he had gone requires following the manuscript far more carefully than its mystery first suggests. The key source is not a single complete ancient manuscript, but a layered work now known as First Enoch. Its major sections were composed during the Second Temple period, and parts of the book survive in Aramaic fragments from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Among them are copies of the Astronomical Book, catalogued as 4Q208 through 4Q211, found in Cave 4 at Qumran. These fragments confirm that traditions about the ordered courses of the sun, moon, and stars circulated centuries before the surviving medieval Ethiopic manuscripts. The complete text is preserved in Ge'ez, the classical language of Ethiopia. Greek fragments also survive, but no full Aramaic copy has been recovered. This matters because every modern translation depends on comparing witnesses that are separated by language, geography, and time. The imagery behind the title draws mainly from two connected bodies of material. In 1 Enoch 72 through 82, the angel Uriel reveals a fixed heavenly calendar in which the luminaries follow appointed gates and immutable courses. In 1 Enoch 17 through 36, Enoch is led through remote cosmic regions containing prisons for rebellious spirits, mountains of fire, chambers of the winds, and places reserved for judgment. The text states that these realms belong to the hidden architecture of creation. It does not state, in precise philosophical language, that time is absent. Some interpreters see a contrast between mortal change and divine permanence. Others understand the passages as apocalyptic geography, a symbolic map designed to explain cosmic order and final judgment. Even the identity of the inhabitants shifts from scene to scene. Holy angels guide Enoch. Imprisoned spirits await punishment. The righteous dead occupy separated places. Above them all stands the eternal judge. But one textual distinction determines whether this is truly a place beyond time or something more specific. The distinction begins with what Enoch actually sees. In 1 Enoch 17 through 19, he is carried beyond the inhabited earth into regions where ordinary geography gives way to cosmic boundaries. He sees places of fire, storehouses of the winds, and the foundations of the heavens. The landscape is not described as empty. It is occupied, guarded, and ordered. Then the account narrows. Enoch reaches a place where 7 stars appear bound together like great burning mountains. The angel explains that they are heavenly powers imprisoned because they transgressed the command of the Lord. Nearby are the spirits of other rebellious beings, held until the time of judgment. The text states that these entities remain in confinement while awaiting a future sentence. That means the realm is not timeless in the strictest sense, because expectation still exists. A judgment has not yet happened. Yet the passage creates a different kind of temporal tension. The prisoners do not age, escape, or alter their condition. They remain fixed within a divine schedule that no human action can interrupt. Their existence resembles suspension, not the absence of time. The difference is crucial. For an ancient audience, time was often understood through visible cycles: sunrise, sunset, lunar phases, agricultural seasons, and appointed festivals. But Enoch's cosmic prisons lie beyond the familiar human landscape governed by those signs. The beings there are cut off from ordinary history, while still moving toward a divinely appointed end. Some scholars interpret this as apocalyptic symbolism. The scene demonstrates that rebellion has consequences even when final judgment appears delayed. Others read it as part of a larger ancient cosmology in which moral order is built into the structure of the universe itself. The text therefore gives the title a qualified answer. Enoch does describe places where ordinary human time seems powerless, but the inhabitants are not free from sequence, memory, or judgment. They are trapped inside a waiting that may feel endless. And that raises the darker question: if these prisoners are still waiting, what exactly marks the moment when their time begins again? The answer becomes stranger when Enoch is shown another region, not for fallen stars, but for the dead. In 1 Enoch 22, he reaches a great mountain containing deep hollow places. These chambers are separated from one another, and the angel Raphael explains that they have been prepared for the spirits of human beings until the day of judgment. The text presents several divisions. One place is associated with the righteous, where there is a bright spring of water. Other chambers hold sinners who await punishment, including those whose crimes remain unresolved in earthly life. The scene is not a later medieval picture of heaven and hell. It is an earlier Jewish vision of the dead kept in distinct conditions before a final reckoning. Here, time operates differently again. The spirits are conscious enough to cry out, remember injustice, and await an appointed outcome. Yet they no longer participate in the rhythms that measure ordinary existence. There are no harvests, dynasties, or aging bodies. History continues elsewhere, while these inhabitants remain separated from it. Some scholars interpret the chambers as an apocalyptic expansion of Sheol, the ancient realm of the dead. The innovation is moral division. Death no longer gathers everyone into one undifferentiated shadowland. The righteous and the guilty occupy different spaces because their futures are already being distinguished, even before judgment is completed. That makes Enoch's universe more unsettling than a simple map of timeless heaven. It contains zones where beings persist without living through human time, but still retain identity, memory, and expectation. The righteous wait. The accused wait. The rebellious powers wait. Each group exists under a verdict that has not yet fully arrived. Then the vision shifts upward. In later passages, Enoch sees the dwelling of the holy ones in the presence of the head of days, surrounded by countless heavenly beings. This is not imprisonment, but permanence, a realm defined by divine order rather than delay. So the investigation now faces two radically different kinds of existence beyond ordinary time. One is suspension under judgment, and the other is nearness to the eternal throne. But are these actually separate places, or different levels of the same cosmic world? One small textual fact changes how confidently this vision can be read. The title, Head of Days, which appears in the Similitudes of Enoch, survives in the complete Ethiopic tradition, but no manuscript of that section has been identified among the Aramaic Enoch fragments from Qumran. That absence does not prove the similitudes were unknown there. It does not prove they were written later. It does mean that the passage describing the enthroned figure cannot be checked against an Aramaic witness in the same way as parts of the astronomical book or the Book of the Watchers. The phrase itself is significant. Head of Days evokes extreme antiquity and divine sovereignty. Some scholars connect it with the Ancient of Days in Daniel 7, though the wording and literary setting are not identical. In 1 Enoch, the expression helps distinguish the eternal ruler from every created being whose existence is measured by appointed periods. But translation can sharpen that contrast. English readers may hear days and imagine ordinary calendar time. The ancient image is more complex. The title does not necessarily describe a being located where time has vanished. It presents one whose authority precedes and governs the ages. That difference is easy to miss. If the phrase means the source and ruler of all appointed times, then the heavenly court is not outside time because nothing happens there. It is outside human control because every sequence, judgment, and destiny depends on the one enthroned above it. The surviving manuscript history therefore places a limit on certainty. The concept is present in the Ethiopic text, but its earliest recoverable wording remains beyond direct comparison. And if the most important title survives only through later transmission, how much of Enoch's timeless realm depends on the language through which it reached us? That question has become more precise because modern manuscript science can examine features that earlier readers could not see. Multispectral imaging, high-resolution photography, and digital reconstruction allow scholars to recover faded letters, compare handwriting, and test whether fragments belong to the same manuscript. These methods do not reveal a lost doctrine. They reveal ink, skin, spacing, damage, and scribal habit. For the Aramaic Enoch fragments from Qumran, paleography helps estimate when individual copies were written by comparing letter forms with other dated or datable scripts. The result is not an exact year, but a historical range. That range confirms that parts of First Enoch circulated in Jewish communities before the Common Era. It also shows that the work existed in multiple copies, not as a single isolated curiosity. The modern connection becomes especially important in the astronomical book. Its ancient scheme divides the year into 364 days, arranged in a highly regular pattern. The text presents the sun, moon, winds, and heavenly gates as parts of a fixed system disclosed by the angel Uriel. Scholars compare this structure with calendrical traditions found elsewhere among the Dead Sea Scrolls, including texts that also favor a 364-day year. The resemblance is significant, but it does not prove that every community used one identical calendar, or that the heavenly journeys describe physical astronomy. A textual parallel is evidence of shared concepts, not proof of supernatural observation. Still, the comparison clarifies what outside time may have meant within Enoch's world. The vision is not chaotic, it is intensely measured. Every luminary has an assigned path, every season has a boundary, every judgment has an appointed moment. The realm beyond ordinary life is governed not by the absence of time, but by a form of time that cannot drift. Modern imaging can sharpen a damaged letter. Digital tools can join fragments that once seemed unrelated, yet no instrument can decide whether Enoch's ordered heavens were intended as cosmology, revelation, or both. And if eternity in this text is perfect order rather than endless duration, then who is permitted to live within that order without being imprisoned by it? The people who preserved these traditions did not all agree on what authority they carried. At Qumran, multiple copies of Enochic writings were stored among a much larger library of Jewish texts. Their presence shows that the works were read and copied. It does not prove that the community treated them as scripture in exactly the same sense as the Torah or the prophets. Early Christianity inherited the debate rather than resolving it. The letter of Jude, verses 14 and 15, cites a prophecy closely corresponding to 1 Enoch 1:9 and attributes it to Enoch. That is direct evidence that at least one early Christian author knew the tradition and considered it useful, but quotation alone does not establish the later canonical status of the entire book. Some Christian writers went further. Tertullian, writing around the beginning of the 3rd century, defended Enoch and argued that its message remained relevant. Other communities did not preserve the work with the same authority. Over time, most Greek and Latin Christian traditions transmitted only fragments, excerpts, or references, while the complete book survived in the Ethiopian Christian tradition in Ge'ez. This history is sometimes described as suppression. The surviving evidence supports a more complicated explanation. Canon formation was gradual, regional, and uneven. Texts were copied or neglected for many reasons, including language, liturgical use, theological preference, and access to manuscripts. No single council is known to have removed 1 Enoch from a universally fixed biblical canon. The result is a striking historical division. One tradition retained Enoch as scripture. Others remembered pieces of it while allowing the full text to disappear from ordinary use. Modern rediscovery did not uncover a text unknown to everyone. It reintroduced Western scholarship to a book that Ethiopian Christians had preserved for centuries. That conflict matters because interpretation follows transmission. A reader encountering only Jude sees a prophecy of judgment. A reader of the complete First Enoch sees prisons, calendars, heavenly courts, and beings living under forms of time unlike our own. So was the vision rejected because it was too strange, or simply lost because history carried different books along different roads? That question remains unresolved because the physical record is incomplete. The Aramaic fragments from Qumran preserve substantial portions of several Enochic works, but not the entire collection as it survives in Ge'ez. The similitudes, where the head of days appears most prominently, have not been identified among those fragments. Scholars therefore cannot determine from Qumran evidence alone when that section reached its present form, or how widely it circulated before the Common Era. The uncertainty deepens when the fragments themselves are examined. Many are small, darkened, and broken along lines that remove precisely the words needed to complete a sentence. Reconstructions can be persuasive, but they remain reconstructions. A missing letter may alter a name, a verb, or the relationship between two beings. Modern imaging can recover traces invisible to the eye, yet it cannot restore parchment that no longer exists. This leaves the central mystery suspended between evidence and absence. We possess ancient copies of Enochic traditions about heavenly order, imprisoned powers, and cosmic geography. We possess a complete Ethiopic text preserving the wider narrative, but we do not possess one ancient manuscript containing every passage in the form known today. Some scholars argue that the surviving pattern reflects a collection assembled over time. Others emphasize the coherence created by later transmission and editing. Both positions must account for the same problem: the text reached us through gaps. The present-day question is therefore not whether First Enoch exists. It does. Nor is it whether ancient readers imagined realms beyond ordinary human time. They clearly did. The unresolved issue is how closely the complete surviving book reflects the forms known to its earliest audiences. And somewhere between the missing Aramaic lines and the preserved Ethiopic pages lies the answer to who, in Enoch's vision, truly belongs to eternity. Now, an important distinction is necessary. The physical evidence proves that Enochic writings circulated in Aramaic among Jews in the Second Temple period. The manuscript evidence proves that several sections of First Enoch were copied at Qumran. While the complete work survives through the later Ethiopic tradition, the textual evidence shows that these writings describe cosmic prisons, chambers for the dead, ordered heavenly courses, angelic beings, and a divine court governed by appointed judgment. But none of this proves that Enoch physically entered another dimension. It does not prove that fallen angels or imprisoned stars exist as observable beings. It does not prove that ancient writers possess scientific knowledge of a realm where time stops. Those conclusions belong to theology, interpretation, or speculation, not archaeology. What the evidence does establish is more precise. The authors imagined reality as layered. Human beings live beneath changing seasons, political kingdoms, aging bodies, and uncertain justice. Beyond that visible world, the text places regions where divine decisions remain fixed. Some inhabitants wait under sentence. Some spirits await vindication. Holy angels carry out commands. The eternal ruler is not portrayed as drifting through endless days, but as governing the sequence of days themselves. If the cosmic prisons represent existence removed from ordinary history, and if the 364-day system represents time perfected into an unchanging heavenly order, then the larger question becomes whether Enoch's timeless world is really a place without time, or a place where time has become completely obedient. That possibility changes the meaning of who lives there. The rebellious do not escape time. They are confined by its appointed end. The dead do not cease to exist. They remain divided according to a judgment still approaching. The holy ones appear closest to permanence because their actions align with the order established above them. The strongest interpretation, therefore, is not that First Enoch describes a blank eternity where nothing moves. It describes several realms beyond human chronology, inhabited by beings whose relationship to divine order determines whether permanence feels like freedom, service, waiting, or punishment. Yet one final object still holds the investigation: open the damaged fragment from the cave, where only part of the ancient vision remains. The fragment from Cave 4 remains what it was at the beginning, a damaged piece of parchment, darkened by time, carrying only part of a vision that once belonged to a larger manuscript. It does not preserve a modern theory of physics. It does not say that time simply disappears. What it preserves is more unsettling: a universe divided by different relationships to time. For human beings, days pass through birth, labor, memory, and death. For imprisoned powers, time becomes confinement. For the dead, it becomes waiting. For holy angels, it becomes obedience to an order that never fails. And for the eternal ruler, the text imagines authority not merely within the ages, but over them. The physical evidence still exists. Aramaic fragments from Qumran can still be examined. The Ethiopic text can still be read. Their survival proves transmission, not the literal geography of heaven. Yet the idea endures because it touches a fear older than the manuscript that eternity may not be one experience, but many. Some beings enter permanence as peace, others enter it as judgment. And if Enoch's vision describes not a place where time ends, but a place where every being is fixed forever in its true relation to time, who would choose to live there?